You're listening to JetNation Radio, the official podcast of JetNation.com, the largest independent fan site in the NFL. Be sure to check out our forums and talk all things Jets with thousands of other diehard Jets fans. Now, to get you up to date on all the latest Jets news, notes, and quotes, here are your hosts, Dylan Tereman and Alex Varallo.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of JetNation Radio. This is your host, Alex Varallo, joined with Dylan Tereman. Dylan, how are we doing tonight, bud?
Doing well. It's been a couple weeks since we've got back on together, so glad to be back. And it's a big day. We've had a lot of news, both Jets-related in the past couple weeks, and today, the last 24 hours, we've had a lot of non-Jets NFL news. And it's been quite a whirlwind on Twitter the past couple hours.
Yes, absolutely, and it's definitely good to be back on the radio with you. Last week I took a little time off, a little R&R, and, it's a good point to come back as we're just about to go into the NFL draft, combine talk, and do some other things. Tonight we're going to get into a little talk on the Jets to start the show, and then we're going to go into the NFL combine and talk about some players of interest, and then we have a segment at the end of the show talking about free agency scenarios that could alter and affect what type of draft the Jets might be having in the first round, and we'll break down more details into that. But Dylan, as you mentioned, there's a lot of stuff going and circulating the NFL right now, not only within the Jets but outside. And all of these moves and information that have gone down over the last 24 hours definitely impact the Jets in some way. So why don't you just go ahead and quickly break down some of the breaking news that has occurred in the last 24?
Yeah, so I think the one that most indirectly affects the Jets would be the first domino, the biggest domino as far as the NFL is concerned, and that's Aaron Rodgers. He signed a tentative deal to return to Green Bay. There's been reports, I believe McAfee was the one that broke the news. I don't know who broke the numbers, but it looks like 4 years, $200 million. Aaron Rodgers said that was false, but that he is returning. So he is returning. We don't know the number yet. We're assuming it's going to reset the market, a two-time MVP back-to-back. So, that's the first domino. And then the second domino, which happened 90 minutes, 2 hours later, was Russell Wilson being traded from Seattle to the Broncos for a haul of picks, 2 first-round picks, which include the 9th overall this year, 1 pick in front of the Jets, 2 second-round picks, a 5th-rounder, and then 3 players, Drew Lock, Shelby Harrison, Noah Fant. So they got a ton of picks for Russell Wilson. And everybody immediately went to Twitter and started saying, Jets need to make a trade. When is Joe Douglas going to start using some of these draft picks? And the name that comes up frequently and has come up before we've talked about him is DK Metcalf. And if the Jets would potentially be able to, get him away from Seattle, it looks like they're going to enter a rebuild. So get him out of there and potentially what a trade could look like for DK Metcalf. And we said on the podcast 6 weeks ago, we talked about wide receivers, specifically Calvin Ridley, DK Metcalf, and Amari Cooper, and news has happened on all 3 of those, really. Amari Cooper looks like he's going to get cut if he isn't traded. Calvin Ridley has been suspended for the entire 2022 season for gambling on sports games, which is really unfortunate. He said on Twitter after the fact it was $1,500, which obviously is minor to an NFL player, but major in the implications that it has on his future. And then the last one was DK Metcalf. And 6 weeks ago, we were talking about a $16 million price range for him roughly per year. He's 24 years old, has 1 year left on his rookie deal, and he's been, super productive, 900 yards in the last 3 seasons. Every year he's been in the league, really. And then today, the secret hidden third domino happened, and I think this is a really important one. Mike Williams re-signed 3 years, $60 million to stay with the Chargers. So I look at the 2 players, Mike Williams and DK Metcalf. Mike Williams has been in the league a little bit longer, but I think DK Metcalf is a better player. So you're automatically starting with a price tag on DK Metcalf of $20 million when that time is up after next season. So that's going to heavily influence the amount of trade, or the trade value, I should say, that the Jets should give up for DK Metcalf. And truthfully, if I'm Joe Douglas, I don't know about you, but if I'm Joe Douglas, I'm not even entertaining a phone call from John Schneider, the GM of the Seahawks, if it starts with pick 10. Obviously, pick 4, absolutely off the table, but pick 10, I'm hanging up on him. Pick 35 or 38, I think that's a sweet spot for DK Metcalf, because we've been targeting playmakers at that spot in the draft with, mock draft simulators for the Jets for the last 6, 7, 8 weeks. So I think 35 and 38 would be a good starting point for DK Metcalf. I want to hear your thoughts, but I think the 10th overall pick, which I've seen on Twitter, I think that's way too much if you're going to have to pay a person $20 million the following season. And there's already been riffs about him not being 100% happy in Seattle, so who knows what that's going to look like in New York. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts, but I think you can't even entertain a first, and you have to start maybe at 35, 38, and work from there.
Yeah, I completely agree with your takes in regards to the DK Metcalf situation. Allocating a top 10 pick for him, yes, we know that he's a very good player. He's been consistent. He's got Pro Bowl level talent. But where the Jets are currently sitting and how their team and their roster is as of today, March 8th, they have a lot of holes to plug in before, they start giving premium blue chip kind of draft picks away for that kind of position. Wide receivers is definitely a very, very important position. But as far as like this whole team as a whole, I don't feel that would be a good decision by Joe Douglas and company. Now, if we were to entertain, one of our second-round picks, and maybe we can bundle up some later picks to go with that, I'd like to keep I like the competitive edge that we have this year, having 2 picks in each round, within that top 40. I think that gives us a really, really good opportunity to bring in more young talent on rookie contracts that will solidify this roster for the long term, or at least for the next 4 years. We are starting to see a lot more of these, a new foundation of Joe Douglas in these young rookie, draft picks. He's had an abundance of them, and to see him give them away for a player like that, you're talking about Metcalf, who's in his prime. This is his prime window right now, 24 years old. Like you said, he's probably going to be looking somewhere between $16 million or more. And when we make that trade for him, we're only acquiring him for this year. I believe this would be his final year of his rookie deal. And then if we wanted him long term, we're going to have to pay him big time money. So I don't know if the Jets would want to do something like that, given the opportunity to, let's just say, things work out and they're targeting wide receiver at 10. I find it way more lucrative to find a wide receiver on a rookie deal for significantly less money, and you can lock him up for 4 years and have a 5th-year option on a new wide receiver for Zach Wilson to, pair up with. That, to me, sounds way more intriguing than using a premium pick on DK Metcalf. Again, second round and maybe a few later picks, I wouldn't be mad if they went ahead and did something like that, because he is a phenomenal player, and I was extremely high, with his talent when he came through the draft a few years ago. But at this point in time, I just don't think the Jets are, in a contending position to make that move right now. Now things can change, as we get closer to April, and if they have a decent free agency and they feel that they have the wiggle room to do so, again, I won't be mad at the Jets for being aggressive and doing something like that. I just don't think it's in the cards for them. But it is intriguing, and like you said, there's been a frenzy going on since these rumors have come to social media with all these different players. And you broke the news to me on Malik Williams, and I'm feeling a little down about that one. He was one of my top wide receivers that I wanted the Jets to target. Looking at that contract of $60 billion, I don't even know if Mike Williams statistically deserves that kind of money, but he is a very good player, and the Chargers clearly know that they have something good, and he works well with their quarterback, so why would you want to break up that connection? Completely makes sense. They want, their young quarterback who's on an elite path right now to continue that with the guys that he's been comfortable with. So good for the Chargers and Mike Williams. Glad he got paid. Unfortunate for me and my fandom and hoping that he'd come to the Jets. But that's what makes the free agent frenzy, so intriguing this time of year, because a lot of players are beginning to get tagged. David Ninjoku was another one, and that was a tight end that I was hoping the Jets would go for. I think Schultz was somebody that you were talking about. He got tagged. So it looks like, even the tight end group for free agency is starting to dwindle, and, it's a good thing that there are still some formidable guys that the Jets could acquire in March and come into the draft. I definitely think that they need to prioritize getting another tight end here. Hopefully a day 2 guy, maybe a day 3, because, from what I've seen, that this class is pretty deep, and, Daniel Jeremiah might have, put a damper on anyone that was thinking of going after and targeting a tight end very early in the draft. He put a pretty good argument out during his segment on how this class is very, very deep, and you could probably find quality tight ends in the late 3rd, early 4th, and maybe even the 5th round for this draft. So I trust DJ over most, and so hopefully the Jets get to do that. Kind of running on a little bit off topic here, so I'm going to bring us back on course. But Dylan, if you have another thought, now's the time.
Yeah, I was going to say, just to circle it all back to wide receiver and DK Metcalf versus rookie at 10. I know you just said Garrett Wilson. There's other names, obviously, but I just looked at Devonta Smith's contract last year with the Eagles, his rookie contract, because he was the 10th overall pick. And I just wanted to see what the overall parameters of the contract would be. And it's a 4-year, $20.1 million deal. That obviously has the 5th-year option built in. So I'm looking at it of, do you want DK Metcalf for this year and then $20 million per season beyond that, or do you want a guy for 4 years at a total price of $20 million, and then you get to make your decision? So if it were up to me, I'm on board with a wide receiver at 10, just like you are. Not quite sure Robert Saleh is. He had some comments to say about wide receivers, and their development seems to be, 2 to 3 years before they hit their stride. But I think a wide receiver at 10 would be a financially smarter option than trying to trade for a DK Metcalf.
Yep, absolutely agree on that one. And speaking of contracts and 5th-year options, that'll bring us into our first topic of the evening that we want to get into, and that is Quinn Williams. It was just announced, I believe, just last week that Quinn Williams' 5th-year option will be picked up by Joe Douglas. So, we're just going to give our quick thoughts about that one. Dylan, do you want me to kick it off, or do you have something prepared?
Yeah, that's fine. You go first. Okay.
So, we were talking briefly off air, about the defensive line and everything like that. And, this option that's being picked up, now clearly, things can change, but that does give the Jets a little bit more of a, long-term options with Quinton Williams. We get to solidify our defensive line for a few more years with the same guys. We have Lawson on a 3-year deal. We put John Franklin Myers on a 3-year deal. Now we're going to have Quinton Williams for the next 2 years, possibly with him getting a big extension. See how that goes. So they're building a core at this defensive line, and they've got some other guys in-house as well, that UDFAs and other rookies that are in the mix with this defensive line unit. But, it just makes me wonder how much more money in draft capital they're going to put into the defensive line. Because as of right now, we were just looking at the contract for Quinton Williams being at, this year it's going to be about $10.5 million, and with his 5th-year option, at minimum we're looking at $11.5 million. So you take that $11.5 million, you're paying around $13.5 for John Franklin Myers, and you're paying around $15 million for Carl Lawson. So, at the moment here, the Jets have, somewhere near $45 million invested into about 3 players that arguably play the same position. So that's a lot of salary cap devoted to, that group. And I'm just, curious on how much more money they're allocating for that. I do think it's good because Quinton has shown, really, really good things. And then, it seems to he gets a little nagging injury, and then we miss him for a couple weeks or a couple games. Last year he fought through, I believe, a shoulder injury, and he may have had some other things going on. So good thing is that they're picking up his 5th-year option, so maybe his health is better than we anticipate. And I can't recall the last first-round pick that got an extension on this Jets team. So that's another promising thing, being that we got a good one and we got a right pick in the first round with a player in Quinton Williams. Dylan, your thoughts?
Yeah, while you were doing that, it afforded me some time to pull up our trusty spot rack numbers. And you alluded to it right there, how much spending can they possibly do on this defensive line. And I looked it up by positional spending, and according to Spot Rack, the Jets are currently 5th in the NFL in D-line spending. This is across the entire D-line, both edge and interior. Quite honestly, I don't even know if this includes Quinton Williams' 5th-year option number. So you're looking at top 5 or even top 3 if that number hits. You have the Chiefs at 64, Eagles at 62, Saints at 53 with the Vikings, and then the Jets right there at 48. So they very easily could have the most money tied up into the D-line when it's all said and done. And then you flip over to the opposite side of the ball, the other trench that Joe Douglas likes, and they have about $40 million, which is around league average at 14. So personally, I would like to see a little bit more spending on the offensive side of the line, but I understand that that's a position that isn't always one to hit free agency. But back to Quinton Williams, I think it totally makes sense for the player. He was the 3rd overall pick, and we knew it coming out that he was a young player that probably wasn't going to hit his stride until year 2, maybe even year 3. And I think this year they started to unlock him a little bit. You mentioned it with those little injuries that some he tried to play through, some he just couldn't. And he was still pretty productive. I know he started off with, a handful of sacks and then slowed off towards the end of the year and ended with 6 or 7 sacks. So you want to see that number hit double digits, especially before the long-term deal comes. But at the same time, they're also paying Carl Lawson $15 million a year, and I don't think he's ever had double-digit sacks. So you can see the thought process is, pay them before they hit their breakout year and hope that you get the better version of them than they were, years before the contract. So good for Quinton Williams, another trench piece. Joe Douglas is going to keep building these. So we're hoping that it's, we looked at it 11.5, maybe even 13 million roughly for the 5th-year option. So it is an expensive option, but definitely one that's worth it. And hopefully they get a long-term deal done because I like Quinton Williams a lot.
Yeah, untapped potential there, and I think we've only seen a glimpse of what he's capable of. So, yeah, definitely, hugely intrigued to see what he's got going on here. And one player that I didn't mention was, Sheldon Rankins, making about $4.5 to play inside defensive tackle for this team as well. So there's another just about $5 million thrown onto the table as well to that defensive line group. And, I don't want to jump too far ahead with our talking points for tonight, but, just talking about this out loud, it all automatically just starts to, switch up my takes and my perspective on where I think the Jets should go for the draft, which makes us all the more exciting.
Every second it seems like it changes.
Yeah, I'm just biting my tongue and trying to, stay the course here and not be a floozy and jump to every single, idea and run with it and then flip-flop and go back the other way the next day. It gets a little chaotic. But let's move our way into the actually, just before we go ahead and we get into the NFL topic here, just want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Mile Social. If you don't know who they are, please go to milesocial.com. They help businesses improve their social media status on all sorts of levels. So please go to milesocial.com. That is milesocial.com. Okay, Dylan, get into the NFL Combine. Tonight, what we are going to try to accomplish here is we're going to go through this, try to go through this as quickly as we can. We do have a lot of notes. Mine are pretty decent. Yours, I just was going through before the show, and you've got some great notes written up on a lot of players. So what we want to do is talk a little bit about some players that, the eyes popped, and I know you have some winners and losers that you're going to go through. I did more of, a few players that stood out to me, one player that I feel broke out with their NFL Combine performance, and then a draft riser as well. I think you have some of those guys written as well, so that's good. So, let's get right into it, and let's talk about some of the players that stood out to us from the Combine. And do you want to go back and forth? I'll do one, you do one. You want to do that, or do you want to go through your top three and then I'll do my top three?
Yeah. Let's go one for one.
Okay. So my first standout from the NFL Combine is James Cook. Did not know that he was Dalvin Cook's younger brother, and when you look at him, you definitely see the reason why. He's a little bit, smaller, I would say, in frame. Dalvin's got a pretty big frame for a running back, but you can see that the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. There's pedigree in the Cook family as far as the running backs are concerned. And, and that's what happens when you watch the Combine. You find players that you never even looked at any sort of film and didn't really know too much about, and that's what makes it so great. Then you can go check out, go onto YouTube and look at their film and say, wow, now I'm really starting to see why this player is so intriguing. So to give you some brief statistics here, James Cook, very much like his brother Dalvin, dual threat guy, very good in the receiving aspect like his brother. Throughout his career, he put up 700 yards receiving and 6 touchdowns. He had 1,500 on the ground with 14 touchdowns rushing, so 20 total touchdowns, knows where to find the end zone. And one of the stats that popped out to me is that he averaged almost 11 yards per reception as a receiver. So as we talk about running backs, you really need to be able to do as much as you possibly can for your offense, and being able to be a viable receiver, that's obviously a plus. He would probably be somebody in the mid-round of the draft that could arguably be a steal, and I think taking him and Michael Carter as a 1-2 punch, I think that would be a lot of fun for us Jets fans. Looking at his Combine numbers here, he ranked 8th overall for the 40-yard dash at a 4.42, 16th with a 33-inch vertical, and then 6th overall for all running backs with a 124-inch broad jump. That's 10 feet 4 inches. So you can see that he's got, the speed is there for the running back, and he's got lower body strength, which is definitely needed for his position. And I think the receiving aspect is just a bonus there. So that's my first standout from the Combine. Dylan, the floor is yours.
No, that was a perfect one. And you're saying sometimes the Combine is our first exposure to some of these players, and sometimes it's the first time you see him without a helmet on, and you truly can see the resemblance between him and Dalvin Cook. So that's really funny. But yeah, absolutely a great player. The first guy I want to target, I'm sticking on the offensive side of the ball as well. This is a guy who was at the Senior Bowl. He caught my eye at the Senior Bowl. He had some defenders tearing up at his undershirt because he was just breaking away from him at the line of scrimmage. And that's Rutgers' Bo Melton. He measured in at 5'11", 189. He's got 31.25-inch arms, which for his size are pretty good. And then you turn it over to the testing, and he just was explosive. 4.34 in the 40, which was 4th best or 5th best out of the wide receivers, and a 38-inch vert, which is also top 5. And then you add in the fact that this guy can play special teams. I think maybe obviously he's a top 100 pick to me. Round 3 is an easy one for him, but does he squeak into round 2? I'm not quite sure. I have him kind of bookmarked right there at the day 2 spot. I think he could be, even top 50 if a team likes him, but he's somebody that throughout this entire process has stuck out to me, and being a local guy from New Jersey, I had to spotlight him as my first winner for the Combine.
Very nice. Okay. So my number 2 guy was Scion Johnson, and just kind of like you said, not seeing the player with the helmet off and being able to take a look at the body of work, per se, and see him move around, being nimble as a cat. I definitely could see, some of the write-ups that I've seen about him being able to get out in space, and he's nimble and quick on his feet. I think Scion Johnson would really, really be, not only a good player for the Jets, but just as far as trying to solidify the interior aspect of your offensive line. I think he could come into any team and help out right away. He wasn't very quick as far as the 40-yard was concerned, 5.18, ranked 28th overall for all offensive linemen. But what he did stand out in was some of the other drills that he participated in. And unlike majority of the prospects that attended the NFL draft, he did just about every single one except for that 60-yard shuttle. So kudos to him, because there was a lot of players that personally just chose to get involved in a few things, going with the route of less is more. There's a lot of people like to nitpick on certain, drills, like, the infamous 3-cone. We see that every year. There's a player that's supposed to be a speedster that has a below-average 3-cone, and all of a sudden he's no longer going to be a good player. And then, come to find out, the complete opposite happens when they get to the league. So, it's kind of interesting how that works out. But with Scion Johnson, he ranked first overall with the bench press with 32 reps. So you can see that he's got that gargantuan strength, 32-inch vertical. So the lower half of the body is very strong, 4th overall for all offensive linemen. His broad jump, he was at 112 inches. That was 7th. The 3-cone drill, 7.38. That was 4th overall. And then his 20-yard shuttle was a 4.46, 3rd overall for all offensive linemen. So you could see, this guy works very, very good within a short area, amount of space, and that's definitely what you want for either a guard or a center, somebody, that could be nimble and, can pull and do all that athletic stuff. So I really, really liked Scion Johnson before the NFL Combine, even more so now seeing him, under the national media. So who's your number 2 guy, Dylan?
That was another great choice, another Senior Bowl guy that I got to see up close, and he stayed late after practice, especially on the day it rained, to practice snaps at center. So this guy is 5-spot versatility on the offensive line, so another great choice by you. I'm going to stick on offense again. It's kind of funny. Offense seems to be the theme of where we're going here, but this is a guy that I was already really high on in the process, and he ended up moving a little bit higher, and that's Garrett Wilson, wide receiver from Ohio State, 5'11", 6'8", 183. He had 76.5-inch wingspan, if I can read this correctly. And when it comes to Garrett Wilson, I think the thing that stuck out to me the most was obviously his 40 time. He's somebody that I've done a lot of research on, and his number wasn't supposed to be that low. I know that Lance Zierlein put out a tweet that they'll be adding about 5 100ths or 6 100ths of a second to each individual 40 time, because I guess the track was fast in Indianapolis or what have you. So they'll be adding a little bit of time, but still a 4.38 was blazing for Garrett Wilson. And there's a saying that I heard from the draft dudes, Joe Marino, great podcast. He said, don't count it twice. And this is something that I thought of because I originally had Chris Olave here to talk about. And Chris Olave, the TV had him at a 4.26 on their broadcast little screen there. And he ended up running a 4.38 or a 4.39, just slightly slower than Wilson. But we already knew that Olave was fast. And when I say don't count it twice, I mean if you know somebody's fast coming into the combine, don't watch them run a fast 40 and then say, hey, he's fast. Like, we know that, you know what I mean? So, like, an example of a negative way would be, like, Kenny Pickett's hand size. We've known since even before the Senior Bowl, when he didn't measure his hands, that his hand size was an issue. He wore gloves at his entire career in Pittsburgh. He played in cold weather. So, like, there's, you know, pros and cons to it. But, like, a lot of teams could see that when it's officially measured at 8.5 inches, historically bad, and they could say, oh, we don't want him anymore. But, like, we already know that it's bad. So don't count it twice, whether it's positive or negative. So I was originally going to talk about Olave here, but then I was like, no, Garrett Wilson has to be the guy because he ran just as fast as Chris Olave, and he wasn't supposed to. So Garrett Wilson, like, he was my wide receiver 2 coming into the combine. I'm the biggest Jameson Williams fan. I still don't care if they take him at 10. But I moved Garrett Wilson ahead of Jameson Williams, and now he's my wide receiver 1. I really love what Garrett Wilson can do, and there's a highlight of him his freshman year against Darion Kendrick when Kendrick was still playing for Clemson. It was along the sideline, and I swear Garrett Wilson jumped over Darion Kendrick to catch the ball and kept his feet in bounds, and it was one of the most absurd catches I've ever seen. So for someone like Wilson to come on and have the tape that he did to impress me and then come into the combine and not only run fast but faster than the guy who was pegged as the speedy guy on the team, I'm all in on Garrett Wilson as my wide receiver 1.
There you go. Yeah, I like the segment that you brought up about, you know, fast 40 times and things like that. It's interesting because what I did every year, it really seems like teams seem to fall in love with players that go out and just run super fast in a straight line for 40 yards. Rarely do you see that where a player has to do that without some sort of contact. So,
right.
I know, you know, speed is speed. You know, it's, you know, one of those things where it's God-given talent. Yes, you can improve how quick you are by learning how to come out of the blocks, like, you know, track style from that three-point stance, you know, learning how to stay low and don't come up too high within the first, you know, 10 meters. And here I am talking about, like, my old track days now. But, you know, what I'm trying to get at here is that there's enough statistics to say that sometimes going for the fastest guy coming out the combine isn't always the best thing to do when it comes to the wide receiver position, because if you look at the top 10 fastest 40 times, there's only 2 players that have any relevance out of the top 10 historically. Chris Johnson's one of them, you know, CJ2K, and then you have Marquise Goodwin, who we know is also, you know, an Olympic runner as well. But everybody else on that list has not done much of anything in the league. So don't always, you know, fall for the bait when you see some guy run fast. But apparently a lot of teams love to do that. You know, John Ross, Henry Ruggs, DJ Shark, you know, teams just go for it every single year. And, you know, for me, it's like when I'm, you know, Garrett Wilson running that amazing time, that only helps him because I have him as my wide receiver 1 in this class. And, you know, I like what he does as a route runner, and I think the way that he can separate's great, and now you can see where the separation comes from with that speed and, you know, just having reliable hands and things like that really is the reason why I liked him. You know, now that you add that speed element to it, I think it makes him even propel even higher. But, all right, let me get back on to track here with my number 3 standout. This will be, you know, it's funny, we're on the offensive side tonight. Isaiah Likely, tight end from Coastal Carolina. This was another player that was not on my radar until the combine rolled around. He was one of the players that Daniel Jeremiah was talking about as far as you don't have to go too early in the draft to find a good tight end. You can wait for those middle rounds and find, you know, a gem. Isaiah Likely definitely meets that category. 6'4", 245. He did not run the 40, so, you know, you'll have to take a look at that game speed when you look at his film. But he was extremely active his final year in college, 59 receptions, 912 yards, and 12 touchdowns. Now, 59 receptions is absurd for a tight end in a single season. And I think Trey McBride has 90, so that's like unheard of, probably it's like the 1 percentile. But, to find a player like this, 4th round, maybe 5th round, he was 1st overall in the vertical jump, 9th overall in the 20-yard shuttle. Those were the only drills that he was involved in besides some of the receiving drills with the quarterbacks. But what I really came away with is that he was very fluid. He looked like a pure runner. When I was looking at some of the film, you could see him beating safeties and beating nickelbacks as he was spread out like as that extended wide tight end. So you can, plug and play, move this guy around. I think the term would be like a move tight end. And we know that the Jets need as much help as they can get from the tight end group. The one thing that he prides himself most about is his blocking ability. I don't have the quote in front of me verbatim, but the way he looks at blocking is he thinks that the person in front of him is trying to steal something from him, whether it's money or food or whatever, and that's trying to affect his future, and he takes that personally out on the man in front of him. Don't know how he came up with that, but that's the kind of mentality he has, that if you're standing in front of me, you are not my friend, and I'm going to make you pay. So I get goosebumps when I hear players talk like that. And if there is any way, shape, or how that the Jets do decide to go for 1 or possibly 2 tight ends in this draft, really hoping that they go to Coastal Carolina and go for an Isaiah Likely. Dylan, back to you.
Yeah, that's, again, another great pick. I haven't gotten to watch his film in depth yet, but I watched some of the Senior Bowl film that was sent from the national team practice. And, yeah, Isaiah Likely is definitely a guy. And if you just go back and look at his combine, you want to see some speed. I thought he did the gauntlet drill where they catch passes from either side of the line. They got to run straight. Mm-hmm. I thought he was super fast in that drill. I was like, whoa, like, take a second here. Like, you only get to do it once. Like, don't do it too fast, But he caught everything, and he was straight on the line. So definitely another great player by you. So I'm so conflicted with my third player because I want to cheat, and I want to just say every Georgia player that showed up and did anything there. So I'm going to just say that, and that'll be like my 3A. And then 3B has to be Malik Willis because I don't know about anybody listening, but I'm kind of a sports book guy. I kind of dabble in the gambling, especially when it comes to draft and stuff. So Malik Willis, he's another winner for me because going into the combine, he was the second quarterback odds behind Kenny Pickett to be the first quarterback drafted. And then after his combine, he is now minus 170 odds, and he is now the best odds to be the first quarterback selected. I'm not sure if Seattle changes that trading up. There's surfaces of him, Pete Carroll and Matt Corral meeting each other, so we'll see how that goes. But I think Malik Willis had himself a day, so he's my 3B. And then 3C has to be Ike Mekwonu. I didn't expect him to be that large. You said it too. You got to see the body, the frame, and what they're working with. And that man's upper body is just so compact. It's scary. And he went out there and he ran a 4.93 40, which was 4th best out of all the offensive linemen. Yeah. Absolutely long arms at 34 inches, which is over the threshold of 33. So a lot of people were saying the guard talk dies here, and he's a tackle specifically. I still think teams can put him in if they really needed to in a pinch. But this guy, I mean, if it wasn't for Cam Robinson getting a franchise tag today, I probably would have put more money on Ekwonu to be the first overall pick after the combine.
Definitely. I see you have a couple honorable mentions here if you just want to run through your list real quick. I see your number 2 guy in the winner. I would pencil him as a Patriot if you want to go that route. But, yeah, why don't you just quickly go through the rest of your –
You got me. Let me see. My number 2, Christian Watson. Is that who you're talking about?
Oh, maybe you updated your list. I see Bo Melton here from Rutgers.
Oh, okay. Maybe I did change the order around. I forget who number 2 was. It Bo Melton? He was the guy.
Yes, I think you switched. You had Garrett Wilson up. You moved him up the ladder, which I cannot argue with at all. But when I see Rutgers, I always think of Belichick for whatever reason.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty safe assumption. Now that Shiano's back over there, he's probably, getting that insider information. But no, one honorable mention I do want to talk about is Christian Watson, a big wide receiver heavy theme. You could see which players I like to scout. Christian Watson, North Dakota State wide receiver. I comped him, and I'm not really big on comps, but I think like his body size and his play reminds me of Alan Lazard, which is really perfect because I think after his stellar combine, he's going to be like a surefire Packer in the first round. He ran a 4.36 40, 11 and 4-inch on the broad, and 38.5 on the vert, which I believe were all top 5, if not top 7. I didn't write it down here. And this guy, he at the Senior Bowl, again, I keep bringing up Senior Bowl players, but he was the best wide receiver on the national team. He and Trey McBride, the best pass catchers by far on the Jets team at the Senior Bowl. And I thought Christian Watson was probably the best wide receiver overall, if not for Calvin Austin. Calvin Austin was on my list, but I kind of expected him to do all these explosive things out of Memphis, so he didn't make my winners. But Christian Watson, yeah, I thought he was, 35, 38 overall for the Jets, and now I'm not even sure because of teams like his fit in the offense. I think he's going to be a late 1. Another guy, here we go. We got a defensive guy for you, Alex. Logan Hall, the interior defensive lineman from Houston. Mm-hmm. And I said interior defensive lineman, but I don't think that's what he should play in the NFL. I think teams, especially after interviewing him and seeing his workout where he ran a 4.88 40, which I believe was by far the best out of all the interior guys other than the Georgia freaks. Logan Hall is going to be an edge rusher for me. He's 6'6", 283 pounds. He could probably lose about, 8 to 10 pounds to just get into that 272 range like Trevon Walker. And he's, almost 33-inch arms, which is good for a pass rusher. Almost an 80-inch wingspan, another good thing for a pass rusher. So I wrote here in my notes, if the right coach or defensive coordinator gets their hands on Hall, he could be an immediate impact player, played all over the D-line in college, but is clearly explosive enough to play the edge. So Logan Hall, another guy, surprise, surprise, at the Senior Bowl. It's funny. It's like Jim Nagy's really good at his job at finding these really good prospects. So Logan Hall is definitely an honorable mention for me. I do have some losers here if you want me to get into those. I know you didn't make any losers, and a lot of my losers are just guys that I shouldn't even say are losers. They just didn't participate at the Combine. So number 1 for me was Drake London, wide receiver out of USC. I turned on his tape with all this expectation to be wowed, especially if you look on Twitter, everybody's raving about Drake London. So I put it on, and I'm not that wowed. I think it's just like contested catches a lot, and sure, we think he has speed. He obviously didn't perform. He's still rehabbing from the injury, but I think it's just weird that for somebody whose main attribute is contested catches, I think a lot of people have him as wide receiver 1. So for me, I didn't really see it with Drake London, and then I was more upset that I didn't get to see him perform because I feel like that would have filled in a lot more pieces for me as far as his evaluation. So he was my first loser. My second loser was somebody who did perform and just didn't really perform well at all, and that's C.J. Spiller, the running back out of Texas A&M. And he's a player that I watched the week before the Combine. Late last week, I was watching Kenyon Green film, so I was watching Isaiah Spiller film as well. And I thought he had a chance to be one of the top running backs off the board. And after the Combine, I mean, he had the worst broad jump at 9.5, 9 feet 6 inches, I should say, and the second worst vertical jump at 30 inches. And for somebody who plays a position where you kind of need explosiveness for his size, for some reason I didn't write his measurables down, but for his size, he's an average size running back. I think he needs to be way more explosive than that. So for now, he can't rise higher than running back 3 after Kenneth Walker and Breece Hall. So for me, he was a bit of a loser in the fact that I had to slide him down. And then I had Treylin Burke. He was a loser because I thought his hand size was actually going to be 11 inches. I fell for the bait. And they were 9 7/8, which is really disappointing. So his 5XL was probably a 3.5XL. And I thought his 40-yard dash was slightly disappointing. Again, I thought he was going to run in like the 4.3 to 4.7 range. He ended up running not 4.3 to 4.3 to 4.4, excuse me, and he ran a 4.55. So, just a tenth of a second slighter than I thought he was going to run, but still somebody I thought was going to be a little bit more explosive. His vertical wasn't really impressive, and neither was his three-cone, but I don't think anybody's three-cone was impressive at the Combine. I think that's why few players actually took part in it. And then the last one, I'm not going to throw Matt Corral in there because he didn't participate. It's not fair to him because I think he's still injured from his game. But Derek Stingley, another person, he just has to be a loser for me because I feel like we didn't hear enough good things coming out of the Combine to make me feel confident that he could be a top 10 pick. And I've always, I've been on the side of I wouldn't mind Derek Stingley at either pick. 4 was a little too rich for me, but then 10, absolutely. I thought that was a home run. Now it seems like he's not even going to crack the top 12 even. So it's really tough for Stingley. I had to put him here. His Liz Frank injury is concerning. Connor Rodgers mentioned Santonio Holmes' career ended due to a Liz Frank in 2013. So that's kind of a bummer for me, but that was it for my losers. I know we have some breakouts and risers to get into, so let's swing it back up on the upswing again.
There you go. Yeah, and that was my take on the losers for segment was anyone that decided to opt out and not participate or choose to be selective and just kind of show up and, get their duffel bag full of goodies from the NFL. Got on my loser list because, we were talking about certain players that were looking to protest and, wasn't too sure on how many were going to participate. And it almost kind of seems like almost like disrespectful because they only do about, 150 invites, I want to say, out of everyone that's in the league or eligible to be drafted. And I think there's nearly 300 players drafted, so only about 50% of the people that are eligible to be drafted get an invite, and then you decide not to participate. Just kind of, rubs me the wrong way. I think that what they should do is probably like the Pro Bowl have, an eligible, backup so that they can bring people in that actually want to,
like
showcase
an alternate,
themselves.
Yeah.
An alternate, thank you.
I
hope
what was
interesting?
what's that?
Go for it.
I was going to say I hope that the pro day turnout is a lot more, receptive, but obviously in the same aspect, like less front office people, less coaches, less general managers are going to be at the pro days. So like you said, it was a very big opportunity missed for what is considered the biggest job interview in sports.
Yep. What I was saying is interesting is that there was another running back, a former younger brother, C.J. Spiller, Isaiah Spiller. So there was a little bit of a theme with some of these running backs in the Combine here. And I was unaware that C.J. had a younger brother. I had him up already before you started talking about him at 6'1", 215 for the specs on the young man. The numbers look good on paper, but now it's like that you've seen a small little dose of what he has. Have to go back to the film and check that out. But it's interesting how he came up on your loser list. Not saying that he's a loser, but more or less a disappointment, rather.
Yes.
But, okay, let's do our breakout player segment. This is, what I felt, players that, certain people that call themselves diehards, know who he is, but there's probably an abundance of people that don't watch North Dakota State football, or South Dakota State football, I should say. And that brings me to Christian Watson, someone that you had just spoken about, the 6'4", 208-pound wide receiver. This is a guy that played with Trey Lance and was one of his go-to guys. If you see Lance's film, you'll see that he connects with Christian Watson quite often. But what was really intriguing to me from a statistical standpoint was what he has done on the ground, totaling up to 300 92 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, and both of those 2 touchdowns were over 40 yards. So he has that ability to where you get the ball in his hands, he's able to do something special. Now you take 6'4" with a 200-pound frame, 210-pound frame, and the speed of being 4.36, which was 6th overall for all wide receivers. That says a lot to me. Also, 38.5-inch vert, 6th overall for all the receivers. You can see that he's got very, very good lower body strength. So those contested catches, those jump balls, at 6'4", good chance if you put it up high enough, he's going to come down with it. And then lastly, the broad jump was first in class, 11'4", not just for wide receivers, everybody, and that was a 136-inch jump. So I think that you take what he did in the combine, you go back and you look at the film, and maybe you say, okay, this guy wasn't high on my radar because he played for South Dakota, but now we can kind of take a look at other players that have come from those style of schools and have done great things in the NFL. And I think Christian Watson is going to be one of those players that maybe we were thinking day 2, day 3, and possibly he's been able to improve himself, dramatically. Dylan, who do you have as your breakout guy from the combine?
It's funny you say that because they're small schools, but sometimes they really do pump out these big prospects, and they're known for it. You said Trey Lance, obviously he's polarizing. They put out some offensive linemen the last couple of years, Dylan Radins included. He was a favorite of mine last year. But I'm looking, as you're talking about Watson, the 11 and 4-inch broad at 6'4", the second place broad jump, Calvin Austin the third at 5'7.5". So he's giving up almost 8.5. He's giving up 8.5 inches to Christian Watson, and he's jumping just as high. Maybe I should have put Calvin Austin in my winners list. But
that's like
my
Nate
breakout
Robinson
player
from the Knicks.
Yeah, jumping over Dwight Howard, right?
Right. Unbelievable.
Put it right in there. Yep. So my breakout player is actually a defensive player. We can show some love to the defense, right? So my breakout player is Troy Anderson, linebacker from Montana State. Glenn actually wrote him up, I want to say a couple of days ago for JetNation.com. I advise everybody to go over and check out his article. He gave his input on who he thought stood out to him at the Senior Bowl, or at the Combine rather, and who could really catch the Jets' eye. And he put Troy Anderson, and I was kind of giving him some flack for it. I was like, you couldn't just keep him in the bag until we put out the podcast, because I really wanted to talk about him. And he mentioned it, everything. He's a former quarterback, former running back, so he knows the offensive side of the ball. He's extremely intelligent. He's also extremely fast. He ran a 4.42 40, which was best out of all the interior linebackers. A 10-foot 8-inch broad, which was fourth out of all the interior linebackers. He was 6'3", 243, and hey, surprise, surprise, everybody's rolling their eyes at me now, but he was a Senior Bowl player, so he caught my eye then. I thought he was going to be a mid-round pick, maybe, early day 3, like around where Michael Carter was picked, right outside the top 100. Now it's hard to say that he shouldn't be up there with the Chad Mumas of the world and the Leo Chenals of the world, where like he's in that second tier of linebacker outside of like Nakobe Dean and Devin Lloyd. So Troy Anderson, we'll give love to the small school for our breakout players, and Montana State pumping out a linebacker who is kind of a gadget player. I wrote down some of his school records, and he has like crazy offensive records for yards per game, touchdowns per game, rushing yards as a quarterback in a game. He literally did everything in his time at Montana State, so he's my guy.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, I've got to give love to the small school guys here. Okay, so this will be our last segment for the NFL Combine talk for the evening, and then we're going to go into our final conversation, which I will debrief just shortly. But this is our Draft Riser segment. This is somebody that came in and maybe was considered a player that was on the bubble, and certain people know of this player very well. Maybe some people don't, but for me, and this is what seems to always happen, the players that I covet the most, I don't want anybody talking about them. I kind of want them to slide under the radar in this way. The Jets can scoop them and look like geniuses. Not the case anymore. My player, draft riser, is Chris Olave from Ohio State. This is somebody I've been waiting 2 years to come into the draft. I remember last year I put out a tweet. I think it was one of my mock Monday drafts, and I had Chris Olave on there. And then somebody just, rained on my parade here. And, they said, did you not see that he's staying in school for another year? And, this person could not see me, but I was doing like the Darth Vader, no, dramatically. Please don't say that it's true. And I looked it up, and I had to wait a whole nother year for Chris Olave, but there's no hiding now. He will be going into the draft. I had aspirations of him being maybe one of those early second-round picks for Zach Wilson, but I think after this weekend, there's no hiding him anymore at this point. 2,700 total yards in college, 35 touchdowns, so this guy absolutely meets the mold of playmaker and scorer. As far as the combine numbers are, he didn't do a lot, but he had a 4.39, which was 8th overall for all wide receivers, so the speed is there. He could take the top off of the defense. His vertical jump was 32, which was relatively low, but at the end of the day, I'm really not concerned about him breaking through tackles through, the interior aspect of the like a running back. I'm just more concerned about him beating the man in front of him, which is corners and safeties. And then his broad jump wasn't too bad, 10 feet 4 inches, 17th overall for all wide receivers. So I think what really stood out to him was the track speed, that 4.39. I think that really is going to propel him higher up the draft board now. Wherever he was currently at, I can totally see him being moved up the board now. And I would not be shocked at all if he ends up being a late, first-round pick to one of those, teams that were, contending in the playoffs and, just adding more fire to those, to the Kansas Cities of the world and, hopefully not the Bills or anybody like that, because that would be, really unfortunate to see him in the AFC East against the Jets. I would not want that scenario. But Chris Olave, one of my favorites. You heard it here first, and that'll probably be the tune until April. But, Dylan, who do you have as your draft riser? I did see your message. Folks, we're doing a little bit of an extended show tonight. We normally do about an hour. Tonight we're pressing it to maybe about 90 minutes. So we have time, Dylan, for that one. So, yep, feel free to dive deep on your draft riser, and then we'll go into our final segment for the night.
Cool. And again, Chris Olave, another big play guy. I think I have him in my top 15 on my big board. Yeah, he's number 14, right behind Treylin Burke at wide receiver 4. So basically 3B because him and Treylin Burke are right there together. But my draft stock riser, it's funny, another wide receiver. I think this is the wide receiver episode for both of us, and I'm gonna go with Skye. I'm gonna go with Skye Moore, the wide receiver out of Western Michigan. He's a bit of a smaller guy. I kind of have a type for smaller, shiftier slot guys. Elijah Moore was my draft crush last year, and I think Calvin Austin and Skye Moore are working their way into that category. Skye Moore's 5'9", 195. But he's got big hands, 10 1/4 inch hands. Wow, I just realized that's big for his size. He was top 10 in the 40 at 4.41, and he was 6th in the short shuttle at 4.32, which is really explosive for a wide receiver. And I thought when I watched him, one, I liked his quarterback, Caleb Ellaby, who threw at the combine, and he had some, up and down throws, but I thought Caleb Ellaby had a good combine and should be drafted out of Western Michigan. But Skye Moore, I think he's now going to be top 50 lock. I'm pretty sure I've heard some podcasts of early second round buzz even. So maybe even 34 to Detroit. I think that was where they put him early on in the second round. So this is a guy who could end up sneaking his way into the first round if he keeps impressing. I'm not sure what his interviews and team meetings, how they went, but Skye Moore is a guy that was not on my radar until I think after this, when I came back from the Senior Bowl. Somebody mentioned him to me in Mobile, and I turned him on, and I was like, wow, not only can this quarterback sling it, but this guy, it's funny because he wears number 24. So it's like, am I watching the wide receiver or am I watching a running back split out wide? But it's Skye Moore. And, super talented. I think he's definitely a riser, lock top 50.
Very nice, very nice. All right, well, it's interesting. We did hit a lot of wide receivers tonight, which actually isn't a bad thing because we do know that the Jets need help in that category. And, maybe we put a couple people on our listeners' radar that weren't there before. So be sure to... if you missed out on anybody, feel free to go ahead and listen to it again, either on JetNation.com. From what I've seen, we're on, Apple Podcasts. We are on Amazon Prime Music. You can find our podcast there. I think I found us on Spotify and numerous others, Google Play. We're really, really extending our platform here at Jet Nation. Go to JetNation.com. You can check out the forums. That's where all the talk is. And, I'm trying to find out how many platforms we are currently on with this podcast radio. And I'm moving forward. I'm going to try to extend and share more of those so anybody who happens to be connected with those can tune in and listen. Because I did not know that we were extended that far.
Yeah, we are really on all across all the platforms. And also, if anybody has any prospect questions that maybe there's somebody that should have been in our winners or losers list, tweet at us. I'm at D Tereman.
Yes,
he's at NYJetsLife24. We'll be happy to share some notes, hear your reasoning as to why they should or shouldn't be on our list, and we're always happy to chop it up with you guys.
Right on. All right, so we're going to move into our final segment for the evening, and tonight what we're going to do is we're going to go into a little bit of free agent talk, and we're about, it's kind of already started within the last 24 hours. Within, some high name players have been franchise tagged, some players are being traded. As you mentioned, Amari Cooper, big wide receiver, could be going into the market and parting ways with the Dallas Cowboys. I saw something yesterday about Allen Robinson. Probably going to be testing the free agency market again. This is somebody a few years ago that I know myself and other Jets fans were intrigued about. I was more intrigued with the version of Allen Robinson that was 3 years younger, but still a very, very, very good player. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to talk about the draft just briefly, and we are going to discuss something that has been going around, we've seen on Twitter and various other social media outlets, and that's what should the Jets do with their first-round picks being the 4th and the 10th overall. A lot of people have been arguing that the Jets need to maintain balance and go offense and defense. Other people think that they should go all in on the offense for Zach Wilson, possibly start off the draft with an offensive lineman and then look for a wide receiver at that 10th pick. And then some other people seem to think, spend your money in free agency on offense and have yourself a defensive draft to start off to solidify that. As I mentioned in our last show, the Jets let up 504 points on defense this previous season, and they cannot go back into this next year looking to do repeat that formula because they will be looking at another losing season, and that'll be putting our offense in a position to where we're going to have to throw the ball 50 times or more to try to stay in games, and we can't expect that much from Zach Wilson in his young career. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to talk about free agent players that the Jets should target to solidify the offensive side of the ball so that they could go ahead and warrant 2 defensive picks at 4 and 10 in the draft come April. So I'll get it started with my strategy here. We're going to start with the offensive line, the interior offensive line for in this aspect here. And I have 3 players that they're all vets, and I think that they could come right in and be day one game changers for our offensive line. There was a rumor about a week or two ago that the Jets are interested in Ryan Jensen. This is the center from Tampa. This was a player that hit free agency a couple years ago. That was one of the players that I wanted the Jets to target. And somebody said, the Jets were better off with Spencer Long, because he was a better scheme fit. Man, oh man, does that take sound horrible. He has proven, Ryan Jensen has proven, whether or not if he was a scheme fit or not, that he is a Pro Bowl caliber center. No disrespect to Conor McGovern, but he is on his final year of his contract with this team. He started out as a guard and moved over to center within the last year or two for Denver, and that's how he got his job here with the Jets, playing as a center. His first year, McGovern was not so great. Last year, a little bit better. Seems that this offense and the scheme is better for McGovern's play style. That's why we saw a little bit better play from him. But even still, a player that you're not committed to on the long term, and you have a void at right guard, and McGovern can play right guard, I think that's a no-brainer to solidify the line with some vets. You bring in Jensen. He's not going to come cheap, but you have a viable starter, and then you have a vet at right guard. So now when you're looking at the offensive line, it goes from having a weakness to a above-average player in both interior positions. So that would be my option one. My backup plan for other guards would be a Trey Turner or an Andrew Norwell. I think acquiring any of those 3 players for the interior offensive line, automatic starters, it helps us fix our issues at the offensive line, and this would be really, really good for Zach Wilson and company. Dylan, do you want to do it like we did with the draft, or the combine talk? We'll go back and forth. Okay, so
perfect.
The floor is yours.
Yeah, cool. So, like you, I also targeted interior offensive linemen. I think it's kind of an obvious need, whether they address it, day 2, 3, or 4. Obviously we can't speak on that, but we're going to stick with the defensive first round theme here. So we're going to target big ticket guys. Most of my guys are big ticket free agents, not, small depth positions. These are guys, like you said, that can come in, be day one starters, day one game changers. So the first guy on my list, and he's probably not the number one priority, but he was the number one on the list here. It's Brandon Scherff from Washington. Still weird saying the Commanders. He's going to be 30 years old going into the season. It looks like he's going to command roughly $16 to $17 million. That's what PFF has him projected at. He's been tagged twice by Washington. Last year it was just over $18 million. So the price tag is going to be pretty steep on Scherff. He only played 11 games because of an MCL sprain last year, but when the guy's healthy, we know what he can be. That's why they franchise tagged him twice. They're going to let him walk at 30 years old. Maybe the Jets can talk that number down a little bit, considering he's at the tail end of his career. But Scherff is one that's been linked to the Jets for as long as, I feel like, 3 years now. So the number 2 guy on my list is Quinn Williams, bit of a younger guy from Dallas. PFF has him projected around $6 to $7 million per year, which at 25 years old, if you can get him on a 3 or 4 year deal, that's great, because he's hitting his stride as the numbers aren't, they're still relatively cheap for him. And obviously Dallas is known for their offensive line. Their stature. They've had big guys on the offensive line there, I feel like, since we've been kids, and since I was a kid. And I think it's a no-brainer. 25 years old, zone-heavy scheme guy. Pass pro is a little weak, but I think you can make up for it if you put him, with a good right tackle and a good center. I think Conor McGovern and whoever right tackle is, Mekhi Becton or elsewise, I think they'll help him in the pass pro aspect of it. And then the third guy on my list, who is the most intriguing to me, he's also the youngest, is James Daniels from the Chicago Bears. He's 24 years old. He'll probably look at $10 to $11 million a year. And I just copied and pasted this from PFF because he was somebody that I didn't know much about up until a couple weeks ago. I'm not huge on the free agents. I go straight into draft stuff. So they said starting guard in a zone blocking scheme. Daniels has played predominantly in a zone-heavy attack between college at Iowa and his 4 years with the Bears. So that's where he excels when it comes to the run game. I think the fact that he's 24 and has 4 years of experience shows that he was obviously young when he was drafted, and the potential to hit that ceiling and, you know, exceed expectations on a $10 million a year deal could be, you know, something that the Jets could look for with those upside swings like we were talking about earlier.
Right on. Okay, so I know our position groups aren't copy and paste here, but the next position group that I had in order for the Jets to comfortably go in for 2 defensive first-round picks, targeting the free safety position in free agency. Now, this is a big-ticket guy. You know, the chances of the Jets acquiring him, probably not great, but you never know if they're going to try to put allocate more money than we anticipate into the safety position. As we know, Marcus May got injured last year, tore his Achilles. Looks like his days as a Jet is probably not going to happen. We still don't know, but more than likely he's probably going to test out free agency, or who even knows where he's at with that ankle at this point. But more than likely the Jets will part ways with Marcus May, so they have to go out and fill those big shoes. We saw last year what it was like not having our 2 premier safeties in Adams and May together, and at times it was a little scary. We did see some flashes from, you know, a couple guys. I know the young kid Riley looked pretty decent, and, you know, Davis here and there showed some promise, but there was, you know, definitely numerous occasions where, you know, Ashton Davis was not at the right position or right place, and, you know, needed to clean up some things with his tackling and otherwise. So Tyron Matthew, I don't think I need to get into depth on what he can do. He will be one of the top safeties coming out of this free agency class and warrant a lot of money as well. But you bring him in, you know, you have a Pro Bowl caliber safety and defensive back, you know, solidifying the back end of the defense. That would be a really, really good start for the Jets to start, you know, fixing that position group. The second guy I have here is the guy that I think is more realistic, and that's Marcus Williams from the New Orleans Saints. This is somebody that I really liked before he had gotten drafted by the Saints. Really, really good player. I just think he has everything that you would want as far as, you know, being up to come in to support the run and being a viable threat and a ball hawk as far as pass coverage is concerned. Lastly, my other player was Jabril Peppers. This was the kid, I think he played in Michigan, and they had him playing nearly every position you could think of: punt returner, kick returner, some running back. He played safety and linebacker. He's just a football stud. You know, things didn't work out well with him for Cleveland. He came to New York to play for the Giants, showed some things here and there, but, you know, the Giants are such a hot mess, just like the Jets, that, you know, they really can't be shelling out, you know, extensions and big contracts like that. They're looking like they're amidst a rebuild themselves. So if Jabril Peppers can be had for the right contract, I think that he's athletic enough to come in and just kind of be a Swiss Army knife as far as the secondary is concerned. He could play free safety or strong safety. So I think that gives Robert Saleh options as far as being able to mask certain coverages and things that he'd like to do. I really do like the safety group in this free agency this year. I know that there's some good ones to be had in this draft, but I don't know if you want to go into the draft looking to fill a starting position and hoping a guy is available to you. I think the Jets need to fill that void and bring in somebody that they could be comfortable with. I mean, even if it ends up being Lamarcus Joyner. They talked a lot about him last year and how excited they were to see him in this defense, and he did look pretty good during training camp, but he got injured and he never saw the regular season field. So it wouldn't surprise me if they kick the tires on him again, but if I had my choice, Honey Badger, Marcus Williams, or Jabril Peppers would be my top 3 choice to fix the safety position.
Yeah, those are all great choices, and I was really tempted to not necessarily follow in your position groupings that we chose for this exercise, but I was going to choose free safety. I decided to switch at the last second, and I decided to upgrade the edge position in free agency. I think this is a position that Robert Saleh, he has the patience as far as, he has 5 years left on his deal, but I think in terms of wanting to establish his pass rush immediately and get his plan, working on all cylinders, I think he needs to have veterans come in on the defensive line and really upgrade this pass rush. So a lot of the guys I chose could be looked at as, even rotational players, but I still think it's smart to see what they can do because you can't have enough defensive linemen in the scheme. So the first guy I had was Emmanuel Agba. He's a bit of an older guy at 28. He's looking at maybe $15 to $16 million a year, so maybe a short-term contract for him. But he's somebody that is similar to JFM in the fact that you can put him out on the edge, or you can also put him in on the interior, and he can do work against guards and centers. So he's pretty multiple. I like Agba I'm pretty sure he was with the Dolphins, and before that, the Browns, or vice versa. And he always gave the Jets troubles. So I like Agba there as one of my edge guys. The second guy I have is Melvin Ingram III. Again, another older prospect. He's 33, so you're looking at a 1-year deal. And this is somebody that hopped around a little bit. He went from Pittsburgh to Kansas City, I believe, and he was still productive. So somebody I think, like I said, would be a rotational guy that, JFM, if you wanted to kick him inside to like a 3 technique, you could put Melvin Ingram on the outside, or if you wanted to, go out and get 2 edge rushers, Melvin Ingram is a cheaper short-term option that I think could come in and be a spark because we just really don't have it on the edge. And then the third guy I have kind of a question mark with him, super productive, but it's Hassan Reddick. He's 27. He's probably going to look at like 12 to 13 a year. Some might not even consider him an edge. They might consider him like an outside linebacker type. But when you look at the production as far as pass rushing, he had 12.5 sacks last year, and then he had 11 sacks in 2021 and 12.5 in 2020. So he was productive in Carolina. He was productive in Arizona. They gave him a small 1-year deal in Carolina. So maybe he's looking to get a bigger, long-term deal done. And I think the Jets could be a good place to unlock his potential. Like I said, I don't know if his scheme fit is exactly what the Jets look for. I'm pretty sure he's more of a stand-up guy and not a hand-in-the-dirt type of guy if they want to, rush 4. So Hassan Reddick he's a question mark for me at edge, but I think the production is something that you can't just look away from when you're trying to upgrade this position.
Right on. It's interesting because I think it was the February 15th show when I was doing a little bit of the free agency talk. I had 2 players that you had just mentioned, which was Reddick and Agba, listed as guys that I think the Jets should try to target. Either if you're having Agba play that edge position, which I think would be phenomenal, and if you could use Reddick kind of as a linebacker, and you could use him as an edge guy as well. I mean, both guys had over 30 sacks, in their career thus far. So, the more sacks, the better for this defense, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what I did is I went to the linebacker position. That would be the next position that I would want the Jets to fill. This way, they go out, they take care of the back end of their defense at safety with a free agent pick, and then they get a running mate with C.J. Mosley to pair with. And then, you've got the second level and the third level of the defense taking care of giving you options when you go into the draft for that 4 and 10 spot. A player I mentioned on that February 15th show, Quan Alexander. I know he's a little bit older, but I think the fact that he has chemistry with Robert Saleh in this defense from, his days in San Francisco, I think that would really, really be, a knockout the park. You really wouldn't have to worry about trying to teach him the scheme and development and things like that. He could come right in and just run with the playbook. So I think that would be a smart move. Hassan Reddick was another player that I had mentioned. You basically broke him down, so I'm not going to go too crazy about him. Big Hassan Reddick fan. If that happens, you'll have no complaints from me. And lastly, Kazir White from the Los Angeles Chargers, somebody that I thought that, and it's early, so things could change. Now, this guy didn't start off his career, like right out the gates. He's developed over the last couple of years. In 2020, he had around 77 tackles, half of a sack, nothing too crazy. Last year was his breakout as far as, being one of those above-average linebackers, combined for 144 tackles, 1 sack, and 2 interceptions. Now, you put a young linebacker like that with C.J. Mosley. Mosley's got a couple years left on his contract. You sign Kazir White now, he ends up being your main guy moving forward. And then, there's always the young prospects or, we could go to the draft to try to find more depth. And as we already know, Quincy Williams just got a roster bump, and he'll be with the team next year as well. So you're talking about Quincy Williams, possibly one of these free agent signings like a Quan Alexander, Kazir White, and then you have Mosley, looking at a lot of, 4-2 fronts with, 2 linebackers and 4 defensive linemen. You just need 2 solid guys out there for certain packages, and I think Quincy is one of your better run stoppers. I think Mosley can do everything, but if you want another young athletic linebacker to throw into the mix there, I think that would be the best way for the Jets to right some of the wrongs on the defensive side.
Yeah, Kazir White is super intriguing. I'm glad that when I saw your notes, I saw you had him highlighted, so I wasn't going to, because I have a different avenue, maybe a little bit more cost inefficient at linebacker. But like you said, when you play that 4-2 front, you really need 2 linebackers that are going to understand every little part of the play. They're going to have good instincts. They're going to be able to direct the other players on the field. Like if C.J. Mosley for some reason has to come off the field, I think the Jets would be entirely lost at linebacker. So great choices there. I think Quan Alexander was somebody I was pushing really hard for last year. So another year removed from the injury, I'm all about it. I actually chose linebackers too. It's funny, we're doing a draft defense, so help the offense, but in a sense we are helping the offense by upgrading this terrible defense. And the first linebacker I chose here is Devondre Campbell from the Green Bay Packers, 29 years old, probably going to look at $9 to $10 million a year. I have a feeling, my buddy's a Packers fan, he's pretty dialed in. He thinks they're going to work out a cap-friendlier deal for him to stay in Green Bay, not $9 or $10 million. So I have my hopes up on getting him. I believe he was an all-pro first-team selection, but he wasn't a Pro Bowl selection. It's very weird how the Packers have a history of getting all-pros but not Pro Bowlers, considering all-pro is more the better accolade. So Devondre Campbell is my number 1 guy. And then my number 2 guy is Alexander Johnson. This is somebody I've been following for a little bit from the Denver Broncos. Again, 30 years old, but like I said before, you got to find people that are experienced, that have it between the ears, not just, the young and intriguing aspects of them. You need them to be smart, instinctual, and know what's going on. So Alexander Johnson He was PFF's third best interior linebacker 2 out of the last 3 years. He had a bit of a dip last year, but reclaimed third best interior linebacker last year again. So a bit of a late bloomer, but in Vic Fangio's defense, he was just so fun to watch. Him and Josie Jewell in the middle. Couldn't get enough of him, honestly. So Alexander Johnson's number 2. And then number 3, which I think is a very, very realistic option, considering he has connection with Jeff Ulbrich, is Foye Oluokun. He's 27, probably going to look at 10 to 11 million a year, but this guy's very multiple. And when I say multiple, I mean he could play the mic, he could play off ball a little bit. He can do a little bit of end of the line of scrimmage stuff, rushing the passer. But I think it's the connection with Ulbrich. Ulbrich was the linebacker coach in Atlanta from 2015 to 2019 before becoming the interim head coach in 2020. So he has a ton of familiarity with Oluokun. Somebody that I think has been rumored to the Jets because of the connection, but also because of the upside he brings. So I had to sneak him on this list. It's somebody that definitely worth kicking the tires on for the Jets that are looking to upgrade that second level, especially in terms of speed.
Right on. Okay, so let's do a quick recap, and then we're going to do a quick draft scenario because we're getting close to show's end here. So I focused in on the interior offensive line. I decided that, we should go out and solidify our free safety position and then go ahead and get a running mate for C.J. Mosley at the linebacker position, linebacker/edge. Any way you want to, put that, it's fine by me. So with my situation here that I have, I would go out and I would take Sauce Gardner at the number 4 pick, lock up one of the best corners in this draft. You get a really nice pairing with Bryce Hall, and I think that really gives the defense an edge as far as changing all the wrongs that had happened with, the defense last year. And then my number 10 pick, I would go with the edge pass rusher, Jermaine Johnson. I really, really like this kid. This is kind of a gamble that he would be there at 10. Maybe if you flip and I go with Kayvon Thibodeau and then see if there's a Sauce Gardner or Trent McDuffie, might be more realistic at 10. But I really like Gardner. Dylan, you know that better than anybody. I do really, really do like Jermaine Johnson, and I just have a feeling that, a lot of people are talking about Hutchinson and Kayvon. I think Jermaine Johnson can come away and probably be one of the top or one of the best out of this class, when it's all said and done. And I think that formula that I put together really, really gives you a lot of juice for the defense, and then you fix the big hole in offense, and let's go out and see if we can win some more games in 2022. Dylan, what's your scenario for the draft with the way you put out your free agents?
I don't think there should be a single Jets fan in the world that's mad at Alex's scenario there, for what it's worth. But just to highlight, I also did interior offensive line upgrades in free agency. I did interior linebacker upgrades and edge upgrades as well. So that means that I'm not going to be taking an edge. Sorry for the people that love Kayvon Thibodeau, including myself. But I can't get off this Kyle Hamilton hype train. I think I literally wrote here, my 2 picks are Hamilton and Sauce Gardner. I think you could flip the picks either one. Maybe Sauce Gardner doesn't make it to 10, so you have to pick him at 4, whatever. My notes right here, I just wrote this. I said, if aliens made 2 defensive back prospects in a lab, Ham and Sauce would be the final product. They're tall, lengthy, rangy, ball skills through the roof, run support is a plus. Hamilton is super versatile. He could play single high, deep half, blitzer, slot matchup. If anybody missed it, Mina Kimes broke it down on NFL Live. If anybody's still not sure, just listen to her. She preaches it. He does it all at an elite level. It's not a joke. They're literally 2 erasers in the defense. Somebody mentioned his 40-yard dash time, Kyle Hamilton's at 4.59 at the combine. That dude was not running straight. He almost ran into a sensor. He was running so non-straight. And I think everybody wants to say Kyle Hamilton, the next Jamal Adams, whatever. First of all, they're two completely separate players. And second of all, the only time I'll compare them is their 40 times at the combine, because Jamal Adams ran a 4.56 at his combine, and nobody ever talks about Jamal Adams' play speed, because at his pro day he ran a 4.33. So I expect big things from Notre Dame's pro day. Kyle Hamilton's going to improve that number markedly. It should be high 4.4s at worst, maybe low 4.5s. But I think if people are stuck on the 40 time with Hamilton, just go back and watch Florida State. He had the most rangy sideline interception I've ever seen. So, yeah, ham and sauce, probably my dream scenario right now in this all-defensive first round.
Now, not only am I hungry, but I'm hungry to have those kind of dynamic players in my defense as well.
Right.
It's a really, really exciting time, because the Jets have not had a scenario where they've had, 2 first picks like this in a very, very long time. Joe Douglas, I feel, is building something special. And, after this draft, we might really, really see how special it can be. And they have a lot of opportunity to fix a lot of these problems that we've been talking about on this radio show and throughout the years watching this team. So really, really going to be exciting as we get closer to April. Another week in the books here, and we're getting a little bit closer. But yeah, Dylan, this was a lot of fun. This was a good show here. Got to talk about a lot of different topics tonight. So, I'm sure as things unfold into next week, we may have some more rumors and, sizzling takes that we could share. But we got it started, and, this was just a glimpse of a few players coming from the draft that we were talking about. And, we'll have more stuff coming out. I know you and Glenn are working on a lot of articles on JetNation that we'll be posting as well. So everybody got to keep your eyes out for the articles that will be coming from, Dylan and Glenn and some of our other guys on our writer staff. So, I think saying that we're excited is an understatement of the year. But, yeah, we're getting just a little bit closer, folks. Dylan, any last thoughts or anything that you'd like to, say before we call it a night? I think we did over 90 minutes tonight, so a lot of good talk.
Oh, yeah, this was great. I loved it. I'm fired up. We got so deep into the draft talk. It's the Jets' time to shine. The draft is, our Christmas in April. That's what the Jets always say. So it's been great. I'm glad we're back. It's going to be here before we know it. And, yeah, you mentioned it. We're going to be putting out prospect articles, JetNation.com. Glenn and I are going to be pumping them out. Him and I will be working so we don't do crossover, prospect profiles. But if we can get it out there, we're going to get it out there before the draft.
Yeah, Glenn has been he's been pulling some names that people I didn't even know existed. So, he is really, really grinding the tape, as they would say from the Draft Dudes podcast. And you got to go check out those editorials that'll be coming out in the profiles. Really, really good stuff. I think it's a good time to close here. Had a lot of fun tonight. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate all the comments, the followers, just the listens and everything that you guys do to support us here. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to check out our YouTube scene and check out Green Bean. He's really been dialed up, collaborating with a lot of people as he tours the world. He never hesitates to find a little bit of time to come talk a little bit about the Jets. So don't forget to follow Green Bean and check out JetNation.com. Everyone, thank you. I'm looking forward to next week's show. So stay safe. And as always, let's go Jets.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at JetNation Radio. Glenn is at AceFan23 and Alex is at NYJetsLife24.
Until next time,
go Jets!